Good evening and welcome. Thank you for joining us. My name is Sally Rizzo. I am the Tisbury representative on the High School Building Committee. I'm also chair of the Community Outreach Working Group. We're very excited to present this new vision for Martha's Vineyard High School. This new building will have a generational impact on the future of our island and will be open to the community for future use. For this presentation, you will hear from high school principal Sarah Dingley, Chris Sharkey, TAPE architect, and Annalise Lewis, our communications liaison with CHA, our owner project management firm. During this presentation, you will not be able to speak because you're all muted for the purposes of getting through the presentation. If you have questions, in the chat, there's the website, and we will answer your questions as they come through from the website. So let's begin.
Hi, folks. So my name is Sarah Dingley. I'm the principal of the high school, and I think many of you are probably pretty familiar with this timeline. I will go through it and kind of highlight a few pieces of where we're at right now that I think probably provide the most relevant information about the purpose of the forum, which is really to give you an update on where we are currently. So we've been applying for a long time to the MSBA, which is a state-funded program, and it's a program that gets its funding. I think it's 1 penny per dollar of every bit of sales tax in the state. So this is not federal funding, which I think is important given the climate today. This is not federal funding, this is state funding, and it's going to fund capital projects in Massachusetts with school buildings. So there's a spectrum of what you can apply for. You can apply just to do upgrades and systems. We applied for a school building project, which could entail in renovation, an ad reno, or a new build. So we've been applying for ever since I got to the island. I think that the first application was probably in 2015, 2016, and had 7 attempts. And then finally, due to the work really of a committee made up of select board members and representatives from each town, they got together to message to the MSBA that the island was really serious about making sure that the towns could get along, could work on a new formula for the project, and would pass and support the project at town meeting floor. So that group got together and hammered out a funding formula, and that message to the MSBA the seriousness of the island. And finally, in 2023, we were entered into the MSBA program. So in 2024, after there's a few stepping stones along the way that you work with the MSBA to fully get into the program, we formed a 23-person building committee with representatives from each town, also chosen representatives from the school committee, teachers, parents, members from the tribe, from our Brazilian population on the island. A wide spectrum of folks joined the building committee. And we have a 23-person member that meets regularly on Tuesdays, 2 Tuesdays a month lately. In the winter of 2024, we made our first big step in hiring our OPM, which is CHA, and TAPE architects, and that helped us navigate the feasibility study, which is a big endeavor in which there's tons of testing, surveys that go on in the building, and feedback that comes from the committee. So we entered the feasibility study in the winter of 2024 once we brought on those folks who are also here on the call. The first step of the feasibility study was the preliminary design plan, and that's where we, again, put all the assessments in this big binder. We also have traffic studies. We have options that are created by the architects. The school folks get together and write up an educational plan, which talks about our current services, our current educational services, and identifies places where we need to improve. And now at the end of, I'm going to say, almost a year of meeting, we have completed the second phase of the feasibility study, which is the preferred schematic report. And that is where we first narrowed down to 3 different options: 1 straight renovation, 1 addition renovation, and 1 new build. And from there, we chose one of those to submit to the MSBA as part of the preferred schematic report. And that one is what we're going to share with you tonight, which is AR1, which if you're on the committee, and many of you here are, you're very familiar with what AR1 is, and there's so many exciting elements of and reasons to highlight why we landed on that design. It's a incredibly exciting design, and I think there's so many things that reach across the island. People that may be nostalgic about parts of the current building, people that have grand visions of what we can do to make our classrooms and our science rooms and our CTE spaces better. This really is a great compromise design, and I think it's exciting for the whole island. So the next phase, once we submit this to the MSBA, we're in the process right now of submitting it, and then we spend the next year working on that AR1 and hammering out details, and that's the stage that we're at currently in the project. Thank you.
Now we will see a short video on the current conditions of the existing building.
Welcome to Building Tomorrow Together, the Martha's Vineyard Regional High School Building Project informational series. Today, we will explore the current state of the school and its existing conditions. Constructed over 60 years ago, Martha's Vineyard Regional High School serves as a vital community hub. However, its aging infrastructure now struggles to meet modern standards. Expansion efforts in the 1990s added much-needed space at the time, but current program space requirements are not being met. Dated systems are impacting functionality for students and staff. Our school faces several critical challenges that need immediate attention. These include building code and accessibility issues, energy inefficiencies such as poor insulation and air leaks, and outdated mechanical, electrical, and plumbing systems that are costly to maintain and adversely affect teaching and learning. The exterior envelope of the building requires repair with a cracking foundation and broken or leaking windows. The flooring is damaged with cracked carpet and tiles, while ceiling leaks and water damage are widespread. Air quality is a significant concern, with mold issues and inadequate ventilation affecting the environment. Security also needs improvement, with updates to CCTV and other measures required. There are hazardous materials such as asbestos that must be abated to ensure safety. Outside, the parking lots and the track are in disrepair, requiring paving and new curbing. Together, these issues underscore the urgency of addressing the school's condition to create a safe and efficient environment for everyone.
I think the video really highlights the challenges. I would say that, I'll go through this here, but a lot of it, like there's some certain things that are just foundational. The foundation, obviously, the systems, the HVAC and the plumbing. We've had several in the last 2 years. Pipes break and pipes leak, and part of that is because the pipes are so old that they expand and contract at the joints, and that's really nothing that, we have a great facility staff, but it's hard to predict where that's going to happen. It's hard to then respond immediately without doing damage. The ones that did leak recently leaked into a place where there was asbestos under the floor, so the significant cost of then abating it, evacuating the offices, relocating people during the school year. All of those are just challenges that happen on the regular, in part because we have such an aging building. And then there's the educational pieces that are challenging. We're just different than we were in the 50s. The classrooms are about 100 square feet to 200 square feet smaller than what the Massachusetts guidelines recommend. And that doesn't mean that we're out of compliance or doing anything wrong, but it does mean that classroom configurations, setting up stations in classroom, moving things around so you can promote discussion, those things are just really challenging in the classroom spaces that we have. And then the biggest one I would say would be in our CTE spaces. This island has prioritized time and time again the notion of having a workforce feeder system. We live on the trades out here. We depend on the trades. So many of our year-long residents are trades people. And this high school envisions itself and is a feeder system into those trades. But the places where the students learn the trades and kind of their launching pad into those careers are really substandard spaces. And that's, I would say, what the core of what we appealed to the state to get entry into the program was about, was fixing the career and technical education spaces, programs like automotive, building trades, horticulture, early childhood ed, health assisting, and culinary. Culinary is probably our best. That probably has the most space, but for example, automotive and building trades, they're kind of, the classroom space is in this sort of loft space that's not even ADA compliant. Kids have to kind of climb up a back ladder to get to the classroom spaces. Storage is a huge issue. And even when we kind of do upgrades, we did a recent upgrade with the dust system collection. It's just so cluttered on the floor because of the machinery that we need and the inability for students to really move around and create spaces there. It's just substandard. Horticulture is probably in the worst condition. It's located across Sanderson Road. If you know Sanderson Road, it's the road that goes through the campus. So it is separate. It took a while for us to run a line under the road to deliver Wi-Fi and proper electricity over there. It lacks bathrooms. And I think that's one of the reasons why we end up getting smaller numbers in horticulture. We really think that if the facilities matched what people wanted and where people wanted to spend time, we would be producing more horticulturalists, agriculturalists, and folks that are going into the farming and landscaping community here on the island. The other thing that I think is worth noting, the office spaces, if you've been in the building, you notice that there's like big footprints in the office spaces with kind of dead space. If you look at well-designed buildings with efficient office spaces, you'll have smaller footprints and more efficiencies with conference rooms and individual offices. Over the past 5 or 6 years, we've really expanded the amount of counselors we have in the building, and we have created spaces for outside counselors to come in and see students during the day. That's a core of our social emotional program that we're really proud of. And we converted a closet space recently. It's kind of a storage closet space into a suite of like standalone offices where we can have our counselors and outside counselors come in. No windows, poor ventilation. It was something that we needed, but that's just indicative of sort of the Band-Aid things that we do in the building to try and meet our programmatic needs. I mean, those are the main highlights that I would say here.
Thanks, Sarah. You probably, I mean, looking at this group, I think most of you all probably have a rough idea of this, but we'll just run through the MSBA process real quick. You guys have already been through a lot. It's, as Sarah was saying, you guys started it a long time ago with the SOI. So there's been a ton of work already put into this by the people on the island. So we are just scratching the surface of that work. Right now, if you look, we are at the end of number 3 feasibility study. So tomorrow, or maybe in July, right, we start really in schematic design number 4. And that's really where we start to refine the option that was chosen through the feasibility study, which is that PSR or PDP, PSR, right, and all of that work. And so we'll take AR1, the addition renovation option, and refine that. And we're going to talk to folks in the school. We're going to talk to the SBC. We're going to talk to people on the island as we continue to work through that. And so that's a really important thing for us to note, that this is an iterative process, and we're just trying to keep kind of the ball rolling through this whole thing. And so next spring, I want to highlight number 5, the approval. That's really the big kind of milestone that we're all working towards, right? And so we'll work through schematics, and then the approvals, which is the town votes. That's a yay or a nay on this project. And if it goes through, then it is full steam ahead. We'll do the final plans and bidding, and we'll get that under construction, right? So I guess the big thing is the schematics kind of now and to the end of the fall, I would say. And then the spring is really that big piece. So it's been a really good process. I think the SBC has been, the school building committee has been really involved, and we've been meeting a lot, and they've been making and doing a lot of hard work. So it's been really, really fruitful. This comes basically about a year ago at the start of feasibility, right? In that PDP, preliminary design piece, we did educational visioning sessions with staff, with some community members, with some students. There was a pretty good group that I thought was pretty engaged and thoughtful. And so we had 3 different sessions that kind of culminated in kind of a whole piece of kind of manipulating cutout little pieces of paper, if you guys all remember that, that were there that kind of created a building or a layout, right? And so a lot of that work comes from some of these kind of faculty priorities and considerations. And we also have one that kind of lists out more of kind of the, I would say, the community priorities and considerations. And we have this slide and then the next one. And if you kind of just like go back and forth, or not really, but kind of saw some of that and see some of the bullet points on this one, a lot of them are the same. And so there was a lot of continuity among all of kind of the participants in what I think were those priorities and considerations. And so like a lot of the academic excellence and support and the CTE pieces, right? Collaboration, those were all really big components in all of it. And so this is just kind of highlight that early work that kind of informed a lot of what we're trying to infuse into this kind of ad reno option. So it's all really exciting stuff. So I think, as we move forward, I think you'll get to see kind of how all of that kind of plays out into the scheme. So this is AR1. This is the preferred option. After months of deliberation and kind of going back and forth on a lot of different things, looking through a lot of the different options through different kind of, we had like a matrix of different kind of criteria to look through, right? And so looking at that criteria, looking at other kind of pieces, a big one, cost, and yeah, that's probably a really big one. But I think minimizing student disruption and kind of keeping some of the flavor of the old school, in that we're going to keep the pack and we're going to keep that existing gym. So in this kind of like purpley block, right, that's what's going to be renovated. And so that's the pack, the gym, and then there's like that 90s connector piece that has some classrooms and some of the old locker rooms that we'll renovate and all that. So that purple piece is that existing to be renovated. And then all of the white pieces are the additions. And so it's really going to be a big U-shaped addition off the front of the pack in that parking lot. It'll have a little courtyard you can kind of see at, I think, but there's going to be a courtyard which kind of mimics what the existing school has, right? We have 2 in the existing. I think one gets used more than the other. I think we'll be able to really use this one really well and have it kind of we're having it kind of adjacent to the cafeteria, so we'll be able to kind of have that inside outside kind of lunchtime, but also just the ability for students to come in and out and potentially do some learning out there and outdoor classrooms and all sorts of things. So we're really going to be able to program that well. Again, it's kind of 2 stories. So it's a little different than what we have currently, right? Which is a 1-story kind of sprawling thing. And so having this 2-story piece, it really will help minimize travel distance. It'll reduce the footprint. It'll be really good. And so the 2 kind of images at the bottom, they're just really diagrammatic sections, like cutting through it, right? Like a slice of bread, you're just cutting through it. And so it's really trying to, that top one is showing you that the piece on the right is the demoed portion of the building. So we are going to remove a piece of the building as a part of this project, right? And then build that addition. And the addition is going to happen prior to any of that demolition, right? And so we're going to be able to build that, move students over there, and really minimize any disruption. There will be disruption because it is, building next to a school. There are going to be pieces that are going to be renovated, right? The gym, the auditorium, or the PAC, right? And so we'll try to do our best to minimize that. We'll work with the contractor and make sure that all of that is as smooth as possible, knowing that we can do that. And so if we move to the first floor plan, oh, nope, I lied. That's the site plan. So this is the site plan. This kind of gives you the overall view of the entire footprint, right, of the school campus. North is page right. And so hopefully you guys are all fairly familiar with this, and Sanderson kind of runs right down the middle. And so what we're doing with this is we're really keeping all of the construction west, or page top of the page, I guess, of Sanderson. So everything kind of west. And so all the construction is going to happen there. A lot of the existing fields are going to remain as is. I think, the Sharks and all that kind of stays as is. The track and field right over there, it's pretty much at the end of its life right now. And so that has to be addressed. And I think part of what we're imagining is probably that is going to be some type of logistical place for materials and lay down space for the contractor, but that'll be a whole other kind of thing, right? And so while you're looking at this, the blue line is the car queuing, so it for drop off and pickup, and then red is kind of the bus drop off, and then those gray kind of pieces are some parking that we'll have to kind of flush out through this whole thing, right? Again, it's all iterative, so we're going to continue to process and work through this. But the whole idea behind this and kind of those pulling the car line right onto campus is to reduce any of the congestion on Edgartown Vineyard Haven Road, right? So as much as we can pull off, and it'll be able to reduce that congestion. And the same with the buses, pull that off a little bit, give them a little bit more breathing space, and then it'll flow a little bit better through that. And then we really like to separate those 2 streams of traffic, right? Cars and buses, because there's a lot of conflict and people crossing in front of buses and cars and all sorts of stuff. So we really like to try to separate that, and I think this is going to be a really a good scheme for us. All right, maybe, yeah, all right. Didn't want to speak too soon, but so this is the first floor plan, and so you'll see kind of to the left, right, page left, there's a dashed kind of orangey yellow line that outlines the space. That's what's going to be kept, right? That's the renovation. So it's your gym. Some of those locker rooms we're going to make those better. Some classroom the pack, some drama, chorus, band, arts, right? And then everything kind of to the right, or in front of the pack, that's the addition. And so a lot of those spaces are the general classrooms, some special ed, science classrooms, admin is kind of in that reddy pinkish, kind of towards the bottom right. And that's really where the main entrance is, and that's kind of where we're going to be able to funnel everyone in, right? Is kind of right in that middle by the pack. And so placing the main entrance there kind of does a number of things for us, right? Kind of split the difference. You can go left or you can go right as a student coming in, right? But it also allows us to get into the pack after hours and for performances and things like that fairly easily, while still being able to control who's in and who's out if we need to, right? And having admin right there allows us to control access in and out. And so that's a really big piece. And then you probably can't see my cursor, but kind of just north of or west of the pack is the calf. I think we're going to be able to kind of massage that in a little bit better than where it is currently. But the idea is to have that calf kind of be this big space, open space, kind of more atrium-ish, I would say, but not, kind of, yeah. How do we start? We say it's kind of like the mall type of food court type thing, right?
Yeah, it would, I mean, this is what would probably work out over the course of the next year, is how these
Yeah.
things, like what texture they have, how it feels. But certainly when you walk in, we've been able to go on some tours of buildings, of schools that TAPE has helped design, and other schools too. And what's common is just like the flow is around a center piece, like a central area. And what do you do in the central area? You have, oftentimes it's the Performing Arts Center, the cafeteria, and occasionally the phys ed department or the gym. So this is sort of this is the center here at the base of the academic hallways, the courtyard, the cafeteria, the Performing Arts Center, and just a small, jog down to the gym to the left.
Yep. Yeah, and I think, we've talked and heard a lot about kind of having a heart to this whole school, right? Where the students can come, mingle, collaborate, do all that, but it also allows the community to come in and kind of have that similar space. And so the CTE programs, you can kind of hopefully see it a little bit. They're in like kind of a green. They're kind of spread out a little bit over the plan, but kind of having some of those key, I guess, adjacencies, right? Having carpentry and auto together. And so that allows kind of those messier, dirtier spaces to be together. It allows, we'll have some outdoor kind of lay down space for them to kind of go out and have materials and do all that kind of stuff out there, right? And we'll be able to kind of share and borrow some space for CTE after dark, and some of those types of programs, right? In there. Culinary, kind of jumping over to culinary, it's kind of front and center. Being one of those prominent CTE programs, we really wanted to make sure that had a key place in the plan. The adjacency kind of towards the front, and there's potential of maybe like a ball field, but definitely an outdoor space, right? And so we'll be able to have like outdoor seating, and really an in-out kind of feel to that, right? With the dining. And so that's, I think, going to be a really great asset for the school, but also the community. It's just going to be a really good and easy access there. And then health assist, early ed, those are kind of front facing, but still kind of to the side a little bit. And so we'll be able to have like a little playground probably in front of early ed, right? For all the little kids. And so that'll be kind of an easy access to. And so that it's really all about access, controlling access, while also allowing the community to come in and really make kind of that educational experience for the students really nice. Yeah, and then I guess just the other piece to this, as I'm thinking through it, is the weights and cardio equipment, right? That's on the other side of Sanderson, kind of, in one of those outbuildings. And so what we're gonna do here is we're gonna bring that space back and connect that to the gym, right? And so there's gonna be the weights and the cardio, and then there's gonna be like a little practice gym or practice space. And so might be able to fit like the wrestling mat so they could do their practice in there without having to go into the big gym. So you could have basketball and wrestling happen all at the same time. Yes, horticulture. It is not connected currently to this building. I think we need to work through that a little bit with the district and with the school. And I've heard a couple different things on that. And so it's kind of to the left of this a little bit, kind of on its own. But I think ultimately it's probably going to come back and be attached to the building.
Chris, do you just want to go back to the site plan for a sec? Just so you
Yeah.
can see, because it's not that we didn't put horticulture in, it's just the plan has it. You can see
Yeah.
it on the other side of the parking lot down near where the field is. So that's where in the initial AR1, we designed it with a significant outdoor space too. So it was part of the plan. I think just the consideration and the discussion is whether or not it should be attached to the building or, is it out where the landscaping can happen as well? Is it proximal to landscaping and agriculture?
Yeah, it's a real kind of, it'll be a really good discussion, I think. But yes, so it's kind of over there. So that's more or less, I think, kind of that first floor. The second floor, the addition duplicates up for the most part because it's the two-story piece to it, right? And so a lot of that is just classrooms, special ed, science again. And then one piece that we have right now up here, and we might have to rework it a little bit, but we'll see. But the concept is having this kind of the guidance and behavioral health suite, right? And so that's a really big piece to this, and kind of on its own, right? And away from kind of that main administration core that we had seen at the front, right? And so it's kind of trying to separate some of the stigmas and things like that of going to see whoever in that kind of administration suite. And so this really is a good asset and a really good thing for all students. And so I think this is going to be a really good thing for us. Yeah, so this is the second floor. All right. So we won't do a real deep dive onto this one, but this is the initial concepts for phasing and enabling for construction. And so the big driver here, right, is that we build all of the new as much as we can, right, first. And we'll be able to kind of separate that as best as we can, right, and minimize disruption. You can kind of see that black dashed line, right? That's kind of like the outside fence of what we think can be the construction perimeter. So we'll build phase one, the green, the new first, and then we'll move students in there, and then that'll allow us to do the demo and site work. And while we're doing both of those simultaneously, we'll start to phase the renovation of the pack, the gym, some of those other connector pieces. And so that's really what we're thinking this is gonna do for us. I think we're gonna try to get a construction manager on board in schematics, which is great because they'll really be able to help us really think through this a little bit more granularly and help with costs and figuring out kind of all of that stuff, right? And so this whole construction process, we're imagining is probably going to take about 36 months. The building piece to it, that early like phase one, I think is about 24 months. The kind of that renovation of the existing is probably going to take about 12 months, but we'll be able to kind of stack that hopefully. And so with some site work and do it while we're also doing phase one. And so in total, it'll be about 3 years with all of the site work. So
Chris,
it's
I just
not-
wanted to include that one of the things in our decision-making on the committee was the issue of displacing the students,
Yes.
and spending millions of dollars, on these modular units, that are really, it's kind of a waste of money because they leave after the construction is done. So it was really critical that we come up with a design, especially for those kids that are coming from Tisbury, who lived in trailers for a year. We didn't want 800 students to be displaced in these modular units. So that was one of the critical things, and I think we all felt really good about the decision in the sense that there would be a minimal disruption.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Sally. Yeah, and I think the placement of that addition, right, is critical to that. Minimizing, excluding, we probably really don't need those modulars, right? Because we'll be able to build all of those general classrooms and all of those support pieces that will kind of act, right, as those modulars while kind of the rest of the construction is happening. And so, yeah, it'll be really great in the end. And then, yeah, all right. So that's kind of the nuts and bolts of it at this point. Throughout kind of this whole project, right, and being on the island, sustainability, right, is a really big, important topic for the island and, you know, in general. But one thing that we really want this project to do is we want it to be a part of the sustainability efforts that are already happening on the island, right? And so there's a ton of them, and I think we, as designers and as the project team, right, we're just trying to be able to meet and match that as best as we can with this project, right? And so one thing is like, this is going to be an all electric building. Like, it's kind of, it is what it is, right? And it's because of the already established island goals, right? And so that's like, for me, like, it's super awesome to have kind of already that like base that we can build off of, because a lot of communities and towns aren't as forward thinking on sustainability as I think the island is, and it's just really encouraging. One piece that we're kind of looking at in that one aspect of AR1 that is really nice is it reduces the embodied carbon, and it basically is kind of how much carbon is needed to build the building, right? And so the more you kind of keep of the existing, the less you kind of have to use, right, and resource. And so that kind of reduces that embodied carbon. And so we've been working with our engineers on that a little bit, kind of in the background. We'll kind of continue to work through that. We've had a sustainability forum. We have a sustainability working group through the school building committee that has been kind of talking through this piece. We're going to really kick up probably end of August, September again, to kind of take a break over the summer, but really dive into it then and incorporate that as much of that feedback into our designs as possible, right? It'll be a balancing act, kind of weighing the pros and cons to it all, but we're really, really excited about the sustainability initiatives on this, and having that working group kind of working through that piece with us as a kind of a mile marker, right, of kind of setting criteria and things that we need to hit LEED, which is a really kind of piece to it, to the sustainability, I guess, in terms of like kind of mapping out what kind of pieces we need to hit in terms of air quality and site analysis and things like that. The baseline to be in an MSBA project is silver. So you can just be certified, you can be bronze, silver, gold, or platinum. And so at a minimum, we will be silver, which is great. So yeah, so that's that piece. I think the next piece is probably top of mind, I would say, probably for most people on the island, and that's cost, right? And so this about 335-ish, right, million, as we're kind of estimating right now. And so those are really high level numbers, right? Like that's a high level number. Really, the diagram that you saw, right, of the floor plans in the section, like that's what we've been getting cost estimates off of, right? And so there's not a whole lot of detail. We really haven't drawn through it in anything that would be able to kind of sway that number one way or the other. It's really just a cost per square foot at this point, right? And so schematic design and working with that construction manager that will come on board, that's going to kind of be that time where we're able to work with the district and with the school building committee, and really kind of hopefully, you know, fine tune things, right, and reduce that cost. I think there's already ways that we're thinking through that, because we know that that's a big number, and we're always trying to get that number down. And so at the end of schematic design, we will do another cost estimate, and typically the architect, so us, the OPM, CHA, and then now that we'll have a CM on board, we will all do our own cost estimates, and then we'll reconcile. And so we're going to put all of them in a room, and then they're all going to kind of hash that out and get to a number. And so that will be the number at the end of SD that moves into the approvals, right? And will be forwarded to the community votes. And then that kind of goes into a funding agreement with the MSBA. And then that is where that total number is like set in stone. And so really the work that we're doing through SD to get to that number is vital to that. And I think, you know, this number will come down.
And Chris, this number does not include the reimbursement from the MSBA.
Correct. So this is, yes, it does not include the reimbursement. And so the effective, well, all right, so the the reimbursement rate from the MSBA is about 38% and change, right? And it can fluctuate with some of the incentives that we can get, right? But the way that they have their formulas and all sorts of things, that 38 typically comes down, right? I think for this, I think running through the numbers, CHA through an exhaustive kind of spreadsheet and looking through it all, I think they're estimating, it's an estimate, right? Please, you know, please hear me on that, right? Is about 20-ish% reimbursement on this number. So it'll be 20% less than the so there's a lot of work to be done, but we'll get there. Yeah.
Thank you,
That's all I
Chris.
got.
Okay, so I'm going to take a little bit of time here to talk about the community outreach for this project. And in front of you here is a little bit of a timeline of where we started and where we are now. So in 2024, we kicked things off with community listening sessions, which we held in all 6 towns. Our educational sessions began that summer, and we held 2 community forums later that year. In 2025, we continued these efforts with a diverse series of community events, starting with a sustainability forum at the Tisbury Senior Center, followed by a presentation at the Martha's Vineyard Rotary Club and a community forum at the Edgartown Senior Center and the Oak Bluffs Library. So these efforts reflect our commitment to being transparent and inclusive and collaborative with the entire island community. So the goal of being the community is to get the feedback. Over the course of this project, we've made it a priority to actively listen, and feedback has been collected through a wide range of channels, such as community forums, educational visioning workshops, school committee and select board meetings, project email correspondence, and most importantly, the informal word of mouth, conversations with your friends, family, and your neighbors. So where can you get information about the project? There are several ways to stay informed, but our main hub is this project website. So if you go to, and I believe it's in the chat as well, www.mvrhsbuildingproject.info. You'll find our website. And on our website, there is a ton of information for you, including a calendar of upcoming events, links to virtual meetings, details about the project and the project team, including the folks on this call and others, frequently asked questions, and so much more. We also have videos about the project available on our YouTube channel. So if you have time to visit that, I would encourage you to do that. The video that was shown here tonight is there amongst several others. And we're going to begin putting regular updates on our Facebook page. So please like us. You can find the links to our Facebook and our YouTube channel on our website. So please, if you can, go ahead and subscribe. There's going to be a lot of great information there for you. And if you're interested in supporting, sharing the information, that would be great. We're always looking for support, ideas, suggestions, new ways to engage the community, and that's where you guys really come in. So there are several ways to do this. You could host a gathering and invite a member of our community outreach team to present. You could join our Facebook page. You can be vocal on there, you're able to comment and have conversation, and receive updates through our website and our Facebook page. You can volunteer with us at local events. There's community presentations that we do, as I mentioned earlier, the libraries, the senior centers, etc. Or maybe you have a better idea. Maybe there's another idea or a hub you'd like to suggest. So if you do have an idea of an event or some presentation outlet that you think would be effective, let us know, because we really value your suggestions. All right, and how do we get your questions answered? So there were some questions in the chat, and I think that's great. And I think the team did a good job trying to acknowledge those. But like many of us do, we walk away and we have a question after the fact. So we want to answer your questions. I'm sure you had many throughout the presentation, but the easiest way to reach us is through the contact form. So in front of you is a QR code. If you use that, you can get to the contact form on our website. And you just need to fill it out with some basic information, your name, a message, your question, and our project team will get back to you as soon as possible. We welcome all the questions, comments, concerns. We want to hear them. Very valuable to us, and we are committed to responding to those promptly. So that brings us to the end of our presentation today. We all want to thank you so much for joining us, and we really appreciate your time, your feedback, and your support for this important project. As I mentioned, please go to our website, stay informed as new information is available and posted regularly. And we look forward to continuing our conversations with you and building something great together. Have a wonderful evening.
Great. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Annalisa, or Sally, can I just jump in real quick? I talking about questions, right? Sorry, Elsbeth, I didn't see your question earlier. about the planned expansion. Can I just answer that real quick? Because
Yes, please do. Please do.
I think that'll be a good one. If we go to the first floor plan, so part of the PSR submission to the MSBA, right? We have to show them potential expansion places, right? So that they know that we've thought about it. Anyway. And so you can see there's a little purple dashed line kind of to the bottom left, but then there's also kind of one off of that addition to the top by the teacher planning, right next to culinary. And so there's two ideas here, right? Yeah, so bear with me, but the one's kind of to the right is probably like a smaller little addition. Thinking about it again, it's probably like 2 stories. You could probably build that and probably get another 8 classrooms or so, different kinds of space in there, right? So that's kind of the smaller one. It's a less of an intrusive type of expansion. It's not as extensive or expansive as like what has happened to the current building, right? And so it really doesn't try to go crazy on expanding and elongating some of that any of the routes that like the students would need to like kind of funnel through, right? And then the one to the bottom left, towards the gym and PE, right? That's a little bit of a bigger piece. Again, that could be 2 stories. But the idea that we were kind of thinking through, right, is that being a bigger piece, you probably have more classrooms, right? And that could, if there was ever a discussion about adding more grades to the high school, that could be an option. It separates it kind of from the high school main academic kind of core classrooms, right? And that piece over there. But by putting it down there, there's a potential for its own entrance, right? To separate that so the high school kids can go do their thing, and then the other grades could kind of enter over there. It's closer to some of the gym and the art and the tech and the band, chorus, performing arts, right? And so those would be a lot of shared spaces. And so it kind of helps you with that a little bit. So anyway, those were kind of those 2 ideas for the planned expansion. Hopefully that answered that question. But yeah, I could ramble on about this for forever, but really appreciate you guys all joining us tonight. Hopefully this was helpful.
Thank you, Chris. Okay, so if any other questions come up, again, please visit our website. We want to hear your feedback. We want to answer your questions. And thank you again for coming tonight.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.